And hello again, everyone. Welcome to tonight's presentation on putting it all together, a comprehensive home exercise routine for paraplegics. My name is Franklin. I'm one of the two co-founders of NorCal SCI, and tonight's presentation by Rach is going to be the second night in a row that she's going to be doing one of these. Last night was a session dedicated for quadriplegics. So as always, everyone has been muted in order to eliminate any background distractions, and that's why you're not hearing anyone. We do have an opportunity to ask Rach some questions at the end of the presentation. And so I will ask you to use the chat field on your Zoom screen to pose any questions, and I will bring those up again at the conclusion of the presentation. As always, these presentations are made possible thanks to the generosity of our donors, so we're grateful for them. And finally, as we do with all of our virtual presentations, we are recording tonight's presentation. And so if you need to jump off the Zoom call at any time, or those people that were unable to get on, we will have the recording. Actually, we're going to be sending both the quadriplegics one and the paraplegics one tomorrow morning, along with several links that we think you are going to want and you're likely to ask us about a little bit later tonight. So without further ado, let me introduce Rach, who's a nationally certified Pilates teacher, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and a movement teacher specializing in working with people with neurological deficits, especially spinal cord injuries, and was also just recently certified and licensed as a massage therapist in the state of California. So I'm glad to have Rach back with us again, and take it away, Rach.
All righty, thanks, Franklin. Hey, everyone, it's good to see you all again. As always, thank you, Franklin and NorCal SCI for hosting these workshops. As I always say, I love the educational component because we really get to break things down a little bit. All right, give me a moment. I'm going to screen share with you all. Okay. Give that a second to load here. So I just want to start by saying one thing for folks that were, because I see some familiar faces from last night. If you were here with me last night, the first 10 or so minutes of me chatting is going to look pretty similar to last night. But yeah, we'll jump right in. So I just have a question, because I have seen so many of your faces before. Has anyone here seen 10 or more of my workshops? And you can either raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if you have. I'm just curious. Okay, I don't see any thumbs up. All right, I just was curious. All right, so tonight we are putting it all together. So over these past 16 months, I have now taught 16 workshops on a whole range of subjects. So for the purposes of tonight, I'm not going to be going into the why and the how and the science and the research behind this home program, why I'm doing all of these things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the flow and the order and why I'm choosing the order, but I'm not really going to get into much more than that. I'm going to set you up for the exercise. We're just going to do several repetitions of each exercise, and we're going to keep moving through it. So what have you learned so far? I'm just going to give you a review of these past 16 workshops that I have taught so far. So in the very beginning, very first workshop, we talked about mindful movement, how to really center, bring your awareness and your attention more into your body. We talked a little bit about breath work. And then we started to get into stretches, ranging of motion, how to safely do that, how to move through some tone spasticity that you might be experiencing, whether it's in the lower or the upper body. And then we talked about probably two of my more favorite workshops, the visual and the vestibular system, and how these greatly, greatly affect our movement. We're going to start today off with relaxing, some body scanning, and we're going to do a bunch of visual and vestibular work. And then bed and floor base movement to either help you sit taller, stand taller, move more efficiently throughout your day. We're going to be doing a lot of our movement tonight on the floor. So just as a heads up, If you would like to start making your way down to the floor, or you need help doing that, in the next 5 minutes or so would probably be a good time to do that. You can also do most, if not all, of these movements on the bed. But I'd say probably the first 10 minutes of the class tonight, you can stay seated. So if you're unable to get down to the floor for tonight, you can stay seated and at least participate in a chunk there. How to take care and strengthen your shoulders and what that looks like. What is your core? Okay, building a stronger connection to your core, and then connecting your neck to your deeper core, because those two areas are very intrinsically linked. How to use TheraTubes or those TheraBands to give mainly your upper body, but also some, I mentioned some lower body exercise in there. How your hands and your feet affect your movement. We'll be doing a little bit with the feet tonight. A lot of self-release techniques. I taught kind of 2.5 workshops on this. And then the role of myofascial meridians, which is the connective tissue patterns throughout your body. I think this is the one thing I mentioned in all 16 of my workshops so far. So yes, if you're not familiar, you can return. I think that one was a couple workshops ago. And then lastly, the importance of spinal rotation. And then last night and tonight, we're going to be putting all of those together into a comprehensive program. And then as I always say with this kind of stuff, if you've got fusions or hardware, whether that's in your cervical vertebra, your thoracic, or your lumbar, just being really mindful. We're going to be doing some twisting, rotating work tonight. So not forcing past your end range. And if you've got anything else going on, sores on your skin, shoulder problems, whatever it might be, listen to your body and don't push past anything. Okay, so I have to joke with my clients because I usually come in with a plan of what I want to do in any one person's session. And it more often than not changes based on how that person is coming in, what kind of a day they're having, how they're feeling emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the things. Okay, so I'm going to talk about an exercise order and flow, and then we're going to do a full sample routine tonight, but with a big caveat of a lot of this stuff can be substituted out. And I even encourage you to play with your own order and flow. If something tonight feels off, or you're like, I kind of wanted to do this before this, do what feels good for your body. And that might change week to week, day to day, month to month. Okay, so the first things first, whenever we're doing movement or any kind of a healing practice where we're moving our body or we're coming more into our body, this kind of healing and this kind of movement requires a calm nervous system. It requires us to come from this sympathetic, we're vibrating at higher frequencies, we've got a lot to do in any given day, this fight and flight nervous system. And it requires us to come to this calmer, in other words, our parasympathetic, our rest and digest nervous system. A lot of what you're going to see in the sample routine in the beginning is purely to bring you to a calmer nervous system state so that your body can be more receptive to breath work, to movement, to healing, to whatever is going to happen in that session for you. Okay, so the flow, a general flow. This is how this is what I'm going to be teaching tonight and how I generally teach my classes and with my one-on-one clients. But this is something I also want you to play with. But we're going to start with a body scan. So I'm just going to take you through a simple head to toe body scan for you to allow you to drop into your body more. Relax, right? We want to get to that rest and digest nervous system so your body can be more receptive to movement. And then we're going to do some release work. Release work is the kind of thing that can really be sprinkled in anywhere in a session. It's really good to do before, at least a little bit before. You can do it after a certain exercise movement that was really hard, and you can certainly do it after the session. But doing it before you even start your session can be really beneficial in allowing certain parts of your body to open up, to release a little bit of tension, to become less sticky. And also, you know, when we do the self-release work where we're rubbing, tapping, pulling on the skin, it's also increasing our proprioception and our awareness of that area or that body part. So that's another really beneficial thing of doing release before you start your movement for the day. And then we're going to be doing a lot of sensory input. That's that visual vestibular work that I mentioned earlier. And then we're going to get really more into the movement part. And one of my favorite biomechanists, Katie Bowman, you can check some of her work out. One of her favorite things she likes to say is move as many parts of you as possible. All of the parts of you, move them in all of the directions. Okay, so this is just another way of saying we have so many joints and so many muscles through the body. How can we move, say, for example, our shoulder joint moves in 6 directions. How can we move it in all of those directions to maintain good shoulder health and to strengthen that joint in all of the directions it moves? Okay, so let me just make sure I didn't. Yes. Oh, yes. And then lastly, for all of these, especially because we're going to be down on the floor, whether you have someone assisting you or not with this movement, I want to make sure that you always feel safe. If your body doesn't feel safe doing any of these movements, then your nervous system is perceiving threat. And I put threat in quotes because I don't mean like, you know, someone's coming after you, but I mean threat as in maybe you're in a slightly precarious situation, you're not buckled into your chair, or you're in quadruped and you think you're going to topple over. When our body perceives threat, it locks up, and our mammalian brain, the lower portion of our brain, starts sending all of these signals that inhibit us from feeling relaxed and moving with fluidity and efficiency. Okay, so for all of these movements, make sure that you feel safe. We want to find your edge, meaning that I want you to push yourself with these movements, but there's a fine line between pushing yourself and challenging yourself and not feeling safe. Okay, so we don't want to cross into the not safe category. And that's definitely nervous system related. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through this. Again, this is a sample routine. So we're going to do this tonight in class, but I want you to play with it after, see what works for you. And then on that note, also, depending maybe on how much time you have, how many minutes you have during a day, for everything I'm showing you, again, the goal here is to move as many parts of you as possible and to target the parts of you that maybe need an extra little bit of assistance, help, strength, work, whatever that is. If you want to stay with this full routine, this routine could take you an hour plus if you're doing 10 to 20 repetitions of everything. But you can also do this entire routine, probably, I don't know, in maybe 15 to 25 minutes, doing only 5 to 10 repetitions of everything. So if you're just looking for something that moves your whole body and a lot of your joints, this is a really good sample routine, but you can expand or take away as much as you'd like. Okay, we're gonna start with a little bit of breath work and a body scan. We're gonna do just some really simple check and pre-check movements. So that might be some spinal rotation, some overhead arm movements. For my standing athletes, if you're able to do sit to stands or something like that, you can check with those kinds of movements also. We're going to do some release work, the visual and vestibular system drills, and then we're going to get onto the floor, and we're really going to play with a lot of that floor-based movement. But that floor-based movement is going to combine a lot of my other workshops. We're going to be using the TheraBand. We're going to be doing some shoulder work. We're obviously going to be working your core because all of this works your core. We're going to finish with a check, recheck, and then I'll send you on your way. Okay, but as we're going through this session, I really want you to try to stay dropped into your body. Play with doing something slightly different. Play with changing your breath. the more that you wiggle and the more you explore and the more you try new things, the more you're going to learn about your body and the more that you can do with that information. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this share and let me just get set up on my end. Okay. Great. Let me pull you all up and feel free to turn your cameras on if you feel comfortable doing that. Now would be a good time to come to the floor and or the bed if you're not already. Put you all on gallery mode so I can see you all. Awesome. Okay. Have all of the screens working with me here. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to start off in a seated position. If you're on a seated position on the floor already, that's totally fine. I'm going to stay zoomed in because we're going to be doing some work in this upper third of my body here. But again, wherever you are should work just fine. And then I'll give you a heads up when we're coming down to the floor. Oh, equipment. Sorry, last thing here, and then we'll get moving. Equipment you're going to need. Just going to show you this real quick. I realized that I brought my foam roller to the studio and I realized that 5 minutes before the workshop started. So I don't have a foam roller. I just have a big yoga bolster. If you have a foam roller, a long rolled up towel will do just fine. A bolster should work semi okay. And then a TheraBand of some sort. So we're going to be doing some of that head tail foam roller work. Other equipment you're going to need is 2 pencils or 2 pens. Preferably something exciting for your eyes to look at. So something, I'm holding up kind of a fancy one with letters on it. But if you've got just like a Sharpie or something with a brand name on it that has particular letters on it, that works too. Okay, so you're going to need 2 pens or pencils. And then lastly, if you've got a big squishy ball, I think this one is maybe like an 8-inch ball or so. And one that's tacky. Okay, we're going to be doing a little bit of release work on the neck and possibly the stomach if we have time for it. So you can have that handy. If you don't have one of these, no worries. We can always just use our hands or our knuckles to do some of that release work also. But have that handy if you've got it. Okay, let's get going. So let me just see where we are. Great. Okay. I'm just going to have you all start by coming into whatever seated, standing, grounded position that you're in. And I want you to get comfortable, but I want you to also be active in your body. So trying to come into some kind of a upright posture and whatever that looks like for you. I'm going to have you close your eyes. And we're just going to start with a little bit of breath work here. So go ahead and take one hand to the low belly and one to the chest. And I just want you to start by noticing where your breath is right now. So when you take an inhale, do you feel that inhale in your chest hand or in your low belly hand? And see if you're feeling that breath in your chest hand. See if you can invite that breath a little bit deeper into your belly hand. So just like a vase, if we were filling a vase with water, it would fill from the bottom up. So that's what I want your breath to be doing. We're filling from the low belly up. So feeling that belly hand move away as you inhale. And then sink back in towards you as you exhale. Belly expands as you inhale. And it sinks back in as you exhale. And just stay with that breath. I'm also going to invite you to just nasal breathe if you're able to, meaning you're just breathing in and out of your nose. And you'll stay with that breath, and then we're just going to start this body scan. So just noticing how your head and neck are feeling right now. How's your jaw feeling? And you can wiggle any of these areas around as I talk you through them. How do your upper shoulders feel? How does the right side feel versus the left side? Can you feel your arms, your wrists, and your hands? And then how does your whole back feel? Can you sense the area between your shoulder blades, your mid and your low back? How does your chest and your belly area feel? And whether you have sensation in parts of your lower body or not, again, just inviting in a sense of curiosity, of exploration. If you can feel and sense the hips and the thighs, just noticing how those are feeling. The knees, the calves, the ankles, and the feet. And if you can give the toes a wiggle, go ahead and give the toes a wiggle. Let's take one more inhale, one more exhale, and we'll open the eyes. Good. Okay. So you're just going to take your fingertips. We're going to find our area just under the collarbones, and we're going to come into a light tapping under that whole area. As you do this, I'm going to have you find a hum. Okay, so lips are closed, just breathing in and out of your nose if you can. You're going to take an inhale and then exhale, hum all the way to the end of your breath. You can hum a song, you can hum a couple of notes, just whatever feel good, and do that hum maybe 2 or 3 times. Okay, go ahead and relax, shake the hands out. I'm gonna have you bring your hands, fingernails feels the best, that's my personal preference. Bring your fingernails to your head and your scalp, and I'm gonna have you give yourself the most amazing head scratch you've gotten in a while. Cover every inch of your scalp, whether you've got hair there or not. Might determine if you're using your fingernails, your knuckles, and just noticing what parts of your head, what parts of your scalp feel a little stiff. We have connective tissue and muscles that run all over our scalp and can really influence our head and neck. Okay, shake the hands out. Yeah, just kind of notice how that's feeling. You might feel like your head is buzzing. And then I almost did this last night, but I just forgot. We're going to do a quick check and recheck. We're just going to do a few movements here so you can feel this before and after. So let's start with some neck movements. I'm just going to have you turn and rotate your head and neck to the left and to the right just a few times, just to see what that's feeling like for you. How much range of motion do you have? Does one side feel stickier than the other? Okay, yep, and then coming back to the center. So just taking note of that. And then let's come into a few overhead arm raises. If that's not super accessible for you, you can also do shoulder shrugs, and just notice how either the shoulder shrug or your overhead arm raise feels. How does my speed of movement How is my range of motion? Is it different from one side compared to the other side? Is there any discomfort with this? How easeful or not is this movement for you? Okay, and relax. We're just going to do one more. I'm going to have you cross your arms over your chest. Make sure I'm not hitting the microphone. And you're just going to rotate your spine, head, and neck. Everything will rotate. Looking over one shoulder and then looking over the other shoulder. You're noticing the same things. How does one side feel compared to the other? How is my range? Is it hard to breathe when I rotate in one direction compared to the other? Okay, so you're just taking note. Okay, and relax. Good. Okay, we're going to come back to some release work, and we're going to do those few movements at the very end of class, just to see if you noticed a difference. I'm going to have you grab your release ball, your squishy ball. If you don't have it, I'm going to give you an alternative, so just stay with me for a sec. And we're going to bring it to the side of the neck. We're looking for something here called Erb's point. It is a point about halfway down the side of our neck, that big muscle on the side of our neck, kind of on the back side. There's a lot of nerves and vessels running through this area. So oftentimes when we release it, it can help with our neck and sometimes even our shoulder range of motion. For those of you that don't have a ball, yeah, I'm looking and it looks like most of you don't have a ball. So I'm just going to start with those of you that don't have a ball. We're going to do what we call a skin lift. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. So you're going to take that part of your neck, and I'm just pinching the skin and I'm pulling the skin away from my neck. This is superficial. This is gentle. This does not feel painful in any way. In fact, it should feel kind of good, like, ooh, yeah, I have not done this in a while. If you're feeling any pain or anything like that, maybe back off. Okay, so just moving that whole area. And then as you do it, maybe you're turning your neck just a little bit, turning your neck away from the hand. Okay, if you've got your ball, yeah, keep doing that and switch to the other side if you haven't. If you have your ball, we can use the tackiness of the ball. Let me take off my headphones. The tackiness of the ball to get the same thing. And all I'm doing is I'm just twisting the ball in a clockwise and a counterclockwise direction. And I can move my head as I do it. I can turn and rotate it, but honestly, just moving it side to side is going to feel like it's enough. Okay, good. So we've hopefully done both sides. Just do a quick recheck after this one. Just go ahead and turn your head from side to side again. Okay, and just out of curiosity, I know I said we would do this recheck at the end of class, but I'm just curious. If that improved your range of motion, give me a thumbs up. If it stayed the same, give me a side thumbs. And if it got worse, give me a down thumbs. That's awesome. Okay, I'm seeing all up thumbs. That's great. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, and a side thumb. Yeah, okay. Good. Okay, we're going to keep moving through this. We're going to bring, I'm going to lower this a little bit. We're going to bring our hands to our belly, and we're just going to do a bit of a belly release. So I just want you to start, get my wire out of the way. I just want you to start by rubbing your belly in a clockwise direction. Okay, you can go skin on skin. You can lift your shirt up if that feels comfortable. Otherwise, you're just rubbing. You're noticing the same things that we've been noticing all along. Are any of these areas tender? If they are, you can stop. You can take a breath into that area, and then you can keep moving. And you'll see I kind of changed my technique a little bit because I can sink my hands in a little bit deeper than I used to be able to. So now I'm just, again, I'm moving in a circle, and I'm looking for those tender parts. And I stop and I breathe into it. Okay, good. And then go ahead and shake the hands out. Yeah. We're going to do one more release. I'm going to give you two options because I can only see people's upper bodies here. You can either do a hand release or you can do a foot release. Okay, and I'm just going to talk you through both of them. If you're on the floor and you're able to do a foot release, I'm going to have you do that. And I'm actually going to, let's see, I'm going to back up for a moment here. Okay, if you're doing a hand release, I want you to start by rubbing your hands together. If you're doing a foot release, I want you to start by rubbing your foot. Just bringing some awareness to these areas. Our hands and our feet love to be touched. They love to be touched. Okay. If you're doing the foot release, I'm going to have you find what we call toe and finger weaving. You're going to take your fingers and you're going to weave them in between your toes, like you're holding hands with your foot. And then you're going to move your hand in a wave-like motion to open that area up. For those of you doing a hand release, you're going to grab each finger or thumb. You're going to bottle cap twist it 5 to 6 times. You're going to pinch the end, and then you're going to move on to the next one. Twist, 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 and pinch. Twist, 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 and pinch. For those of you moving with the feet, go ahead and switch sides. And you can also do that same bottle cap twist and pinching with your toes. So if you get through doing the toe weaving, you can do the same thing. Twist, 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 pinch the tip. Twist, 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 pinch the tip. And just work your way through all 5 of those all 10 or however many toes and fingers you have, working your way through. Okay, good. Let's shake that out. I'm going to zoom back in here. And we're going to move into some of the visual and vestibular work. And then I promise we'll come to the floor and we'll really get moving. But this is all prep work that makes a big difference, trust me. Okay, take one of your pencils. We're starting with pencil push-ups. You're going to hold that pencil directly in front of your face, in between your 2 eyes, so that you're staring at one of those letters on your pencil, okay? You're slowly going to bring it into your face. If or when you start to see 2 pencils, you're going to pull it away from your face. Pull it into your face nice and slow. Stay focused on that letter. If or when you start to see 2 pencils, pull it away from your face. Keep going, and I'm just going to talk you through. It's okay if the pencil goes blurry, but I only want you to see one pencil the whole time. This is working on something called eye convergence. If you are able to pull that pencil all the way so it taps the tip of your nose, then do that. The closer you bring it into your nose, the harder it gets. And lastly, the faster you move that pencil, the harder it gets. Okay, so you can move it as quick or as slow as you need to in order to be successful. You're just doing 10 to 20. As I mentioned last night, pencil push-ups are every morning I wake up and I do tongue exercises. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get into that. I do pencil push-ups and a few other eye exercises, and then I do vestibular exercises. Pencil push-ups is always my first exercise I go to when I'm working my eyes. It's just kind of like the warm-up for the eyes, or that's how it feels for me at least. Okay, go ahead and relax. Grab your 2 pencils now, and you're going to hold them out side by side, maybe just 1 to 2 feet apart from each other. Your head and your nose are going to stay facing towards the center. And we're going to do something called Cicades, which just means eye jumps back and forth. So I'm going to jump my eyes back and forth from one letter on one pencil to one letter on the other pencil as quickly as I can, where my eyes can focus on one letter and then they can jump to the other letter. Yeah, I see some creative objects that we're using. I love it. Phones, pencils, cooking utensils, look, whatever it takes, right? Okay, I want you to do 20 eye Cicades side to side. 20 eye jumps up and down, one pencil up, one pencil down. 20 eye jumps at one diagonal, 20 eye jumps at the other diagonal. Take your time, move through it. I'm just going to watch some of you here. Make sure you're not moving your head. There we go. That's better. Yeah, a couple of you fixed that. Just the eyes are jumping for this one. Yeah. Again, it doesn't take much here. We're just basically, just like we do a full range of motion for the shoulder, it's really important to do a full range of motion exercise for the eyes, and this is part of that. Okay, good. When you're done, go and relax, set one of those pencils down. Last eye exercise here. You're gonna look at a letter on the pencil, holding it directly in front of you. You're gonna look at something beyond the pencil. Find a photo on the wall, a lamp, whatever it might be. And you're gonna jump your eyes. This is near far training now. So jumping your eyes near to far, near, far, near, far, near, far, as quick as you can, making sure that your eyes are focusing on each particular point that you're jumping your eyes to. Maybe just do 5 or 10 of these. This is really, really good for your eyes. This is really good for driving when you need to look near, far, near, far. Good. Okay, we're going to do one exercise for the vestibular system, and then we'll get moving a bit more. You're going to hold that pencil in front of you. Last thing. Now the head is going to move. Okay, your eyes are going to stay locked on that letter on the pencil, and I want you to do 10 head shakes like you're saying no. 10 head shakes left to right. Eyes stay locked on that letter on the pencil. The bigger and faster you move your head, the harder it gets. Yeah, that's good. If you've got a fusion in your neck, you're going to have to move more from your body, more from your trunk and torso. When you've done 10 no shakes, I want you to do 10 yes nods. Nodding your head up and down, your eyes stay locked on that pencil. When you've done 10 of those, you're going to do 10 at one diagonal. Imagine your head is doing the disco in one direction, and then your head is going to do the disco in the other direction. And you're just noticing for these, which of these felt hard? Which of these felt like maybe your eyes were jumping everywhere, like they were having a party elsewhere? Okay, yeah, we're just using this as a warm up. But if you go back and watch any of those workshops, you'll get some more insight as to the how and the why behind it. Okay, go ahead and relax. Let's come down to the floor if you haven't already. Okay, let me adjust my screen. I might be playing with that. All right. So you can just start out flat on the floor. And I just want to say one more thing here. In my other workshops, I've taught you how to do some of these movements with someone assisting you. So I had a friend of mine who was the athlete and I was the trainer, and I was teaching you how to do some of those movements, working with between the two of you. Again, for the purposes of time tonight, I'm just going to be the athlete. All of these movements, I'm kind of assuming either you're doing on your own or you've got someone assisting you. Again, if you need some more help with that, you can go back and watch that bed and floor-based movement workshop. Okay, so we're going to start with some head lifts. This is for the neck and the core. So you're just going to be lying flat on the floor. And I want you to start by looking your eyes down your cheeks. Okay. You're going to give yourself a double chin. This is from the neck workshop I taught. And then you're going to lift and curl your head and as much of your shoulders off of the ground as you can. Your hands can be behind supporting your head if you're able to. And then you're slowly going to unfurl that, lowering back down. My eyes stay down. My chin stays tucked until the very, very end. I like to think of the head and neck as one of those party favors where you blow and it kind of uncurls and then it curls up again. Okay, that's what I want your neck and your body to look like. Again, eyes down, tuck the chin, lift the head, neck and shoulders, and then slowly lower back down. To be honest, for folks that are seated, you can do the same thing seated. Tuck the chin, you're just doing a seated ab curl, and then you're sitting tall. Yeah. So practice the same thing. It's obviously just going to be a little bit harder coming up and down from the floor, but you still get as much out of it when you're in a seated position. Maybe you do 5 reps, maybe you do 10. Okay, just we're finding that connection between the neck and the core so we can move through some of the motor development stages, which we're about to do. Okay, second one is get small, get big. This is we're working with some of the Bartinief method. So when we get small, I want you to physically get as small as you can. You're going to cross your arms over your chest. If you can, lift your head up. If you can, or if you have someone assisting you, you could pull the knees into the chest. This is your get small. If you're seated, you're just doing the same thing. You're copying what I'm doing just from the seated position. And then you're going to get big. Take up as much space on that mat or out of your chair as you can. And again, exhale, get small. Inhale, get big. Stretch all the way out through your fingers. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Yes, we're working on core distal, one of the Bartinief fundamentals. Get small, get big, wiggle the fingers and the toes, reach, take up space here, take up space. Get small and get big. If the movement I'm doing is inaccessible, you can also just do this from the spine. Maybe you're lifting your head and then you're arching your back and your spine. So there's a big gap under my spine right now. I'm lifting the head and then I'm arching and I'm reaching out through my hands. Okay, so you can do this. You can make this movement as big or as small as you are able to. Okay, moving into what we call a crescent shape. This is more single-sided. This is hitting some of the Bartinief fundamentals and waking up your sleepier side. So if you can, you're going to bring arms overhead. I'll show you the seated version in a moment. And you're going to have someone either help you or you're going to move your legs over. So we're in this big crescent shape, kind of like a banana. I'm active on the short side. I'm breathing into the long side. Yeah. For those of you in a seated position, you can come into more into like a side bend with a hip hike. So you can pretend like you just sat in gum under one of your butt cheeks. You're like, ew, gross. Okay, right? We did this yesterday. And you can add a side bend into that. And then you can switch sides. And then you would walk the crescent to the other side. This is a really nice one to just stop, take a breath, breathe into the open side as that shortened side is active and it's working for you. Okay, moving from one side, taking a breath or two, over to the other side. Yeah, that looks great. And I see a lot of variations on that from you all. Okay, coming into rolling. So now we're going to work more with your cross-lateral system. Rolling is one of my favorites. I get excited about it. You can either roll from your arms or from your legs. Okay, I'm going to show you just starting from the arms. So right arm would reach up to the sky. You're going to peel your head, your neck, your shoulders over. So I'm reaching, and again, you might need someone assisting you, pulling this right arm up and overhead. You're getting long from your right fingers to your right toes. You would pause, you would take a couple of breaths here. One of my favorite breathing exercises to do in that position, and then return back to the center. Other arm comes up to the sky. Lift head, shoulders, ribs. Get long from fingers to toes. Again, maybe you're wiggling the fingers and the toes. Pause here, take a couple of breaths into that open ribs. Okay, how do those ribs move for you when you're breathing? Do they feel stuck? And then back to the center. And you would just do that maybe a few times each side. If you've got a lot of space, you could keep rolling in one direction. I love to do this one with my clients when I'm working with them one-on-one, because it really hits a lot of things. Okay, and coming back to the center. Yeah, and if you're doing that from a seated position, you're just rotating and reaching. Okay, we're gonna come there into some a side lie position. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah. I'm just gonna briefly show you this. This is also in one of my self-release workshops, but coming into a side lie position, so you always want a pillow for this one, unless you're supporting with your bottom arm. Just gonna take my headphones off for a second. Okay, so in a side lie position, knees bent in. If you're doing release work on your side or breath work, you can stick that ball under the ribs. You've got your pillow. You can take that arm overhead and you can do some breath work here. You can even add in some rotations or just rolling on and off that ball, okay? And that ball can be as high or as low. I can kind of tuck it more under the belly area as opposed to more under my rib cage. And it can do a little bit of self-release into some of the back muscles, the side muscles on the side of your body, and then into some of your organs in the front here. This is a really awesome way to release one side of your body. If you've got one side of your body that's really locked down, maybe even a little spastic, sticky, tight, however that feels for you. Okay, but let's come into a side lie position. We can get rid of the ball. And you've got many options here. I'm just going to show you a couple. So this is from my rotation workshop where we did a couple of book openers. So we're going to take that arm, we're going to pull it back, and we're going to open and rotate, bringing my eyes with me as I go. To be honest, this bolster is a little bit high for me, so I'm actually going to get rid of it, but definitely keep a pillow under your head. That one is just a little high for me. And then coming back to the center. Okay, and you could do 3 each side, opening and rotating. Remember for this one, hips stay forward, ribs are pulling back. So we get a really active rotation through your trunk as you do this one. Okay, and then coming back to the center. I'm going to pull this pillow back in. So maybe doing a few on that side. And then we're going to do some curls. This is going to be for your obliques on the top side. And then obviously all of the fascial chains that run through here being your lateral line and a couple of others. You can bring hand behind your head or hand will move with you. And you're just going to lift. You're basically doing like an ab curl, but I'm trying to lift my head and my shoulders off in the sideline position. Inhale over, exhale to lift. And it's a small lift. We call these bananas. It's a small lift. Yeah, and you could be doing a side bend if you're seated, but it's really targeting that upper side. Okay, and then likewise in this position, this is such a good position to get in some arm work. So if you've got a TheraBand, okay, I'm at kind of a funky angle here, but if you've got a TheraBand, you can do some lateral arm work there as well, some circles or some pulls going straight down to your hip. Okay, and then of course we would switch sides and do the other side. For time purposes though, I'm just going to keep moving through this. Maybe we'll hit that side at the end. Okay, coming into our head tail foam roller series. This has been in a couple of my workshops, so I'm just going to show you some of my favorites for this one. Okay, so again, you might need someone assisting you to get onto your foam roller here. But the point of being on that foam roller is to challenge your core, which I talk about in a couple of the core workshops, and your your stability in this position lying on your back. And then we're going to grab that TheraBand or whatever you're using, and I'll show you some of my favorites, starting with an arm pull coming straight down to the floor. Okay, you're trying to keep your whole front line, all of the muscles and connective tissue on the front of your body engaged. We'll put my headphones back on, just in case anyone's trying to chat. Okay, so doing a couple of arm pulls, finding an exhale as you pull, and an inhale to release. I showed the seated version of this last night, so you can always check that out too. And then we're going to add in a tricep press here, so pulling that band down, keeping my elbows pinned to the side of my ribs, bending at the elbows, and then straightening. Bend and straighten. Okay, for folks where this might be challenging, you'll either need someone assisting you, or you can put cuffs above your elbows if it's kind of hard for you to grip TheraBand. Okay, and then last one of my favorites, coming into more of a snow angel, palms are facing up, pulling that band down towards your hips, and then back up towards the anchor. Yeah, that looks great. Okay. And again, with all of those, maybe you're doing 10 reps, maybe you're doing 50 reps. Totally depends on what you're trying to get out of it and what your goals are. Okay, moving on to, how's my lighting? Let me see if I can get a little bit more light in here. Okay. It's that fall time of year. Oh, no, that's not gonna work. It's that fall time of year where the sun starts to change on me. Okay, great. Okay, so rolling onto your stomach, and you're gonna find an elbow prop, meaning your elbows are gonna be directly under your shoulders. Your hands can either be flat or in a fist. I'm just going to turn an angle towards you a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to start with something called sternum drops. Anything that you're doing in this position from your elbows or from your hands, we're going to press up to quadruped in a moment, where we're loading through the shoulder joint, is not only so beneficial just for the overall health and maintenance of your shoulders, but it's really good for strengthening the shoulders. And it's also really good because it's what we call a closed chain exercise, meaning instead of your arms being free and floating, like doing the snow angels, your hands are grounded, and we have that biofeedback all the way through the end of the chain. So it can be very helpful for the nervous system, and it's there's actually a lot of studies that show closed chain exercises are just better all for overall strengthening of a joint, of an area of that part of the body. Okay, getting sidetracked. So you're in this position here on your elbow prop, and you're just going to start with a sternum drop. Dropping, so sternum is that bone in the center of your chest, dropping that down to the floor and then pushing away. Okay, so this is really coming from the shoulder blades, gliding around the hips. Oh, sorry, gliding around the ribs. Wow, that would be interesting, around the hips. Again, I showed the seated version of this last night, so you can check that out. Okay, and then you're going to hold here, and you're going to do some shrugs up, shrug down, up and down. Okay. And you're going to keep the shoulder blades down, and then you can move everything in a full circle. So I'm kind of shrugging up, pushing away, unshrugging, lower down. shrugging up, pushing away, unshrug, lower down. And this is purely just to mobilize your shoulder blades, okay? To get some movement in there that you might not otherwise be getting. Just look at my notes, make sure I'm not missing any exercises here. Yes, awesome. We've got 2 more. Okay. Again, using an assist, if you need an assist, we're going to come up a push to plank. Okay. So from this position, you're finding that zipper through, like, if quite literally, if you had a zipper on your pants, you're finding that deeper core connection, drawing your abs in a little bit, and then pushing the hips up. Again, when I do this with clients, I'm usually behind them and I'm kind of helping to lift their hips up. But for the purposes of just showing you the movement here, it would look something like this. Lifting up so your back comes to almost a parallel with the floor, and then pushing back down. This is all core and trunk and back strength right here. These are getting a little bit harder. So again, this will depend on where you're at with your movement journey and or who you have helping you. But I'm just going to layer on, because I know we've got folks here of all different abilities. So from here, from that push to plank, you can come all the way back into a quadruped. You can either stay on your elbows here, or you can move to your hands. Okay, for the purposes of today, I'm just going to stay on my elbows. I'm going to show you 3 exercises that are really good to do in a quadruped position. Quadruped rocking right here, which is really good for your nervous system. The reason why we sway and bounce and rock babies is because it calms their nervous system. We're trying to get them to not cry. This is no different. This is just the adult version. Although babies do this one as well. If you've ever seen a baby trying to start their crawling journey, this is how they start. Okay, and then coming back to the center, and then a couple of cat-cows, which I think most of you probably know very well, rounding the spine and dropping, but being very mindful, because for a lot of you, that drop is drastic and you can often hyperextend the low back. So this is really more about control. It's more about being able to curl the tail under you and control back to more of a neutral position as opposed to a hyperextended position. Okay. And then last one we're going to do here is some tail wags back and forth, wagging your tail to the right. So I'm shortening the right side of my body, wagging my tail to the left, shortening the left side. Notice how this movement actually isn't much different than the crescent shape I did when I was on my back. Okay. The spine is moving in the same way it was when I was on my back in that crescent shape. And then, of course, you can always do some extra reps on your sleepier side that maybe isn't quite as engaged or connected as you want it to be. Okay. Yeah. And then lastly here, and this is definitely more advanced, but if you can come up, you can also crawl from your forearms, but if you come up from your hands, and if you can come into a cross lateral crawl, meaning opposite knee and hand move together, or opposite knee and elbow move together, then we're getting more into that ambulatory motor development stage, which is definitely a bit more advanced. Okay, I think that's everything. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. So a few things. Rach kept referring to some of her past presentations, 16 of them really. In the email that you're going to get tomorrow morning with the link to the recording, we're going to have a link to the video library that houses all of our virtual presentations. including the 16 that Rach has done. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work and scroll through them because we have only about 70 of them in that video library. But there's no really easy way for us to include all of them sort of in one email. But nonetheless, we'll have the link to the video library and you could help yourselves to it. The second thing, Rach used that resistance band in one of the sessions that we had several months ago. We did a resistance band training for both quadriplegics and paraplegics. And we had a link to a set of fairly inexpensive resistant bands. So I'll be sure to include that in the email that you're going to get. And then finally, again, you're going to get the email with the links to both the ones, the session from last night for quadriplegics and the one from tonight, obviously, for paraplegics. So you'll have everything in one long email tomorrow morning to help yourselves too. So if there are any questions that you wish to ask, I don't see anything other than someone thanking you, Rach, for an excellent Zoom meeting. Now would be a good time to enter them into your chat field. But Rach, what are your thoughts in terms of, obviously the paraplegics, you mentioned this at the top of the presentation, they have a lot of hardware. They tend to have a lot of hardware in the backs, and a lot of the movements that you did seem to really kind of perhaps engage the back of a paraplegics. What kind of cautions should they exercise? How would they know when too much bending or flexibility is too much for to accommodate the hardware? What do you have any sort of key points for them to take away?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. When I'm first coming to, well, let me just give this precursor of whenever you have hardware, again, whether it's in the neck or the rest of the spine, remember that anytime you do a twisting movement of the neck or the rest of the spine, if you have hardware, let's say you have hardware, let's do an example, T2 to T9. If you're twisting from your trunk, that means all of that rotational force is dumping into the first T1, first thoracic vertebra, and then T9 or T10 through T12, which is, instead of 12 vertebra being able to take that rotational force, you now only have 3-ish that are able to rotate with you. So all of that force is going to dump to the top and the bottom. So the first thing is that never move past your end range. So if we were doing some of those rotational tests, whether or not you have sensation in that area, if you turn and look over your shoulder and maybe it's this much and you feel your body stop, that's your end range. Don't move past that. Same thing goes for the neck. If I've got hardware in the neck and this is as far as I can go, I'm not going to force past that. So doing a little bit of those movements, again, this totally depends on how extensive your hardware and or fusion is. But for the most part, doing a little bit of that movement in that area, as long as we're not forcing past end range, is okay. If you have an extensive bit of hardware like a T2 to T9, you're probably going to want to limit most of that rotation. But what I will say, and I'll give an example. So using that example, if you've got that amount of hardware in your back, hang on, let me turn a light on, and you're doing something like rolling, there are ways where you can compensate and put the rotation elsewhere. So instead of the trunk rotating, you're maybe going to get that rotation. So notice now I'm keeping my trunk in a straight line, but I'm going to reach my arm long and I'm going to reach my leg long. So right now I'm actually not rotating from the trunk, but I'm still able to do some breath work in the side. I still have to support myself in the side lying position, but I'm actually keeping this whole line of me really steady. And that rotation is really, or that movement is really coming more from the hips and maybe from reaching through the arm or out through the leg. So just to say that there are ways you can still do these movements where maybe we lock the part of you that has the the hardware, the fusion, and you can move like what I just did, move from the arm reaching and the leg reaching behind you. What was the other thing I was going to say? So yeah, those two things. Don't push past your end range, and or if you're in a position where you can compensate like that and put the movement in other joints, then definitely play with that.
Okay. All right. Next question. This person actually is not a paraplegic per se, but they have a severe case of scoliosis. Which of these sort of movements and exercises would you suggest for someone who doesn't have an SCI, but more of a scoliosis?
Yeah. Scoliosis is tricky in that it's tricky in that a lot of what I taught tonight is kind of this general sample program for how to move as many parts of you as possible. Scoliosis is totally, totally different. And that also kind of depends on the severity of your scoliosis. If you have slight scoliosis, most of this is going to be great. If you have in scoliosis that's a bit more intense, the rules with scoliosis, and it's funny, I feel like I've gotten a few of these questions now. I feel like I should do a workshop on scoliosis, because I actually have a few folks with spinal cord injuries that also have scoliosis, so I think it can go both ways. The couple rules with scoliosis are to find length through the spine, to come to as much as a neutral spine and pelvis position as you can, and that's like a whole nother topic as to what neutral looks like for somebody with scoliosis. To prop what is dropped. So if you're lying on the floor, again, more of an explanation is needed, but we would prop the parts of you that are dropped to bring you more into that really, to bring you closer to a neutral spine and pelvis. Yeah, and then finding length through the spine. So when I'm working with folks who have scoliosis, we're not doing a ton of side bending and rotating and all of that, because your spine already has some of those rotations and lateral deviations in them, and doing more of that is only going to put you more into that position. So we actually are, for most people with scoliosis, I'm keeping them in a very neutral spine and neutral pelvis, and then we're working more on stability and strengthening from that area. So I would say for this program, skip the stuff that has you, which is a lot of it, but skip the stuff that has you rotating or side bending, and stay with the stuff that keeps you in neutral, like some of the quadruped work, like doing the head lifts, like doing the big small. All of that is okay. I would stay away from the stuff that's twisting or bending your spine.
Okay, very good. We have a question from someone who's asking for additional demos of how to use the resistance bands. I think I'll go ahead and answer this. So as I mentioned, we did a session entirely focused on using resistance bands for paraplegics. So again, in the video library that I mentioned, look for that, because Rach spent basically a whole hour on really all sorts of movements and suggestions on how you could leverage resistance bands if you're a paraplegic. Anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I'll add one thing. I want to say, and they're all blurring together just a little bit, but the exercises I did on the quote unquote foam roller, where you're on your back, I think I did those in the workshop that Franklin has mentioned, but I think I might have done more of those in my how to strengthen your core workshop. So also check that one out, and I think I give a few more there.
Okay. All right. This next question is from a T4 and 5 para, seeking for suggestions on ways to really work on maintaining balance and improving posture as I think he or she says that they're going through some of these exercises. They're asking if it's better to hold themselves up with their arms in a more upright position during deep breathing, or to rely on the core that they have, albeit limited it might be, but be more crunched without the help from their arms to helping them just sort of prop up.
Yeah, this is a great question in relation to breathing. because when we're working, especially like we did today, where we are working on that nice diaphragmatic low belly breathing, it's really optimal. In fact, I would say it's really, really important to be, you don't have to be in this like perfect ballerina position, but if you're really crunched down here, just mechanically, the way that your diaphragm is sitting over the organs when we're in this position and the way the pelvis is and the tail is tucked, you're just making your job a lot harder. I'm not saying it's impossible. You can still belly breathe from this more crunched forward position, but it's going to be much easier and more mechanically correct and efficient if you can bring yourself up in some way. So if you need a little bit of support, whether you're pushing in front or it sounds like maybe you're using the sides of your chair, as long as you're not like holding a tricep dip and your arms are shaking and you're using all of your muscles, if it can be a somewhat relaxed position, supporting yourself, do that with your breath work as opposed to being crunched. I would also just say one more thing. If maybe you're finding this is really hard by pushing your hands down into your chair, do your breath work from a lying down position. You can do it on the bed or on the floor, but that way you at least have your spine elongated and you're not bracing yourself to do that breathing work.
Yeah, in fact, she just added that her question centered mostly in reference to seated position on the floor. So it sounds like what you just said would basically take care of that, right?
Yeah, lie down, just lie down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I don't see any other questions in the queue. Again, thanks to Rach for taking the time 2 nights in a row that you folks have been the beneficiaries of this wonderful work that really has been a compilation of 16 months, right? Since last June or July when we started working together. As always, thanks to our generous donors who continue to make these programs possible, and thanks to Rach, who is a big supporter and believer in the spinal cord injury community, and a lot of work that you have seen over the last year and a half. Everything has been really dedicated to the SCI community. So thank you for doing that, Rach, and look forward to seeing you again next month. And again, you'll be getting an email from us tomorrow morning with all the links that I mentioned. And have a good evening, everyone. And we hope to see you back again next month. Thanks again, Rach.
Yeah. Wait, sorry,
Yeah.
Franklin. Just one more thing. I didn't know if we had one I thought we weren't coming back next month. That might be another conversation, but
yeah.
okay. Okay.
No worries.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Okay, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
again, Rach.
Hey,
Thanks,
it's good to
everyone.
see
Have
you
a good
all.
night.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.